Where do we begin? Where do we begin when it comes talking about the latest episode of the Braxtons? So this entire episode was about them being in grief therapy, but a lot played out and a lot was uncovered, including never before seen footage of Traci in her last days. And I always have to say this to you guys, for those that haven't watched it yet, there is a trigger warning before that, and it probably should be a trigger warning before this recap based off of the things that we're going to discuss. But it is a hard episode to watch, and I am going to give a lot of grace to the opinions that I've been seeing, not just in our comment section, but on social media in regards to the Braxtons, because it's very clear that people are triggered by their own family trauma. So they're reacting the way that they're reacting towards specific people in the cast for that particular reason. And that's why every time that we do a recap of the Braxtons, I'm just going to give you this trigger warning. Remember that this is not your family, that this is a family that is grieving in front of our eyes and have made the choice to be this vulnerable. So before you start tagging them or going in their comment section, talking about your feelings, please be reminded that they lost someone. They also are going through their own traumas and triggers. They are also dealing with this on a public platform. And some might say, and we've said this in the past, well, you put it out there in the public, it gives everyone the right to be critical. It does. And you can be critical here. This is a safe space for you guys to be critical and say, Kempire, I think this, or Kempire, I disagree. That's fine. It's all about how you share it. But I implore you guys not to go in their comment section because, again, literally, they are grieving. And now because they're sharing this on this public platform, they're going through their whole grief again. So please be mindful of that before tagging them, before, berating them in their comment section. Give them some grace because they are helping a lot of people that you don't even know, but maybe you are included by sharing this grieving journey, by sharing their family trauma. So we're going to talk about that and so much more in regards to the second episode of season 1 of The Braxtons on WeTV. As always, be sure to let me know where you're watching from and how you would rate this week's episode of The Braxtons.
Here we go now.
Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. And as always, don't forget, if you're listening to the audio version of this, don't forget you can, the Kempire podcast on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. While you're there, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating. Shout out to our friends over at Rose Forever for sponsoring today's live show, our live recap of the Braxtons. And as you can see, I put it back in the studio. I had to go back to my old house to go get some of my other Rose Forever so I can leave my other roses, my newer ones, out on the island. But as you can see, for those that are watching this on YouTube, this one, I don't remember how old this one is, but we know that this one is definitely months old and still luxurious, still beautiful. I love it. I love anything that's real and that can survive a long period of time, and it's worth every coin. Our friends at Rose Forever promise you that you will have roses for at least a year. And of course, they ship worldwide and they give you great discounts. More information on Rose Forever and their referral link will be available in the description. Thanks to Rose Forever for sponsoring for Tay. All right, so this entire episode is family therapy, grief therapy. A lot of things have been trending. A lot of clips have been going around in regards to this episode, specifically between Tawanda and Tamar. We will get there. I want to first start off with some of the things that they talked about in the beginning. And Trina. Trina, you have my heart. You always had such a sweet, sweet spirit. And I think that she really has sort of been the bridge between the sisters. And you can see that in this episode. But she talks about how she thought that she could handle seeing Traci in her last moments and in her last breath. And Tawanda told her, you're not prepared for that. And she realized after the fact that she wasn't. And it has haunted her for the last couple of years to the point where she says, I can't sleep. I'm eating. Again, another reason why I love this cast, but specifically Trina. She takes such a serious moment. And she always has to make a joke about it. And that might be her trauma response. That might be her way of dealing. But she says, I'm eating for you, I'm eating for you, I'm eating for you. But what concerned me, yes, the eating is one thing. But even eating and overeating is not good for you. But it's when she mentioned that she was drinking alcohol as well. And very clearly, in spirit, the grief counselor says, we're going to make sure that we get you a separate referral so you can deal with your PTSD, because you're dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So she opens up about how after seeing Traci like that, and we have to remember, if you watch the Braxton Family Values, and you know that Traci and Trina always had a closer relationship. And that happens with big families. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just certain people just mesh well together or just find each other as their people. And we see that with Trina and Tawanda. We see that with Tamar and Tony, but I feel like that has changed too. And I wonder if that's changed since the show. I can't recall based off Braxton Family Values, but they were always close, the older sibling and the younger sibling. But it seemed like in this particular episode, there was a little bit of separation. And maybe that's something new. Maybe they'll unpack that in the weeks to come. All right. So Trina talks about how she's been eating her feelings. She's been eating everyone else's feelings. And then she gets really emotional saying that she's haunted by those last moments with Traci. And they rehash how Traci really was this bridge, and they didn't realize how she was the bridge and the connector and the focal point of the family, even though Traci didn't feel like that, even though Traci wasn't treated like that. I know a lot of you continuously say, oh, they need to, right the wrongs that they did to Traci and how they treated Traci all their lives. I believe because they did have those last few months with Traci, realizing that Traci's not going to be here, realizing that Traci is going to die. I'm sure that they healed that relationship with Traci. Or at least for Traci, she healed any grievances that she had with her sisters. But she did warn them. And Miss Evelyn told us in this episode, she says, if you guys continue to argue, I will haunt you. But I love the fact, and I said this in the first week episode recap for those that may have missed it, I feel like this show is a love letter to Traci and to the fans. Because although they had their closure and they had their moments with Traci, they are using the show as their way of closing that chapter for the fans, because we didn't get that, because the show, The Braxton Family Values, I don't think it had ended. It wasn't canceled. I think it was just on a pause, a real pause, not like Bravo pause. So I do feel like, especially in this episode, I didn't realize the entire episode was going to be the grief counseling, but it was needed. I think the fans needed the grief counseling, and I see that grief counseling is continuing on social media. So Trina shares what she's been going through in regards to this and how she's been struggling and how she hasn't slept in the last 2 years. Like the time she goes to sleep is when the sun rises. But we also find out that Tawanda knows about that, Miss Evelyn knows about that, but it seems as if Tony and Tamar might not know about that. And that seems to be a running theme, that the sisters aren't communicating. So I'm trying to take it everyone's story by story. We do also see that Kevin Jr. is there. Sidebar. I know a lot of people are pointing out when Tony referred to Kevin Jr. as Traci's son. I'm going to give her grace because they're filming a reality show and they're also speaking to someone that isn't familiar with the family. But I get why it sounded weird when Tony referred to Kevin Jr., Traci's son, as Traci's son as opposed to her nephew or Kevin Jr. But she could be doing that because they're filming a reality show. She could be doing that because they're in front of someone that doesn't know who that is. Maybe. Well, he has his own drama going on. Apparently, during this episode, the police come to him. Tawanda thinks that someone did this on purpose. They knew that he was filming. He feels like it was intentional. I don't know if she's referring to his estranged wife at the time. Maybe. Well, he has his own stuff that's going on, but he talked about, I'm going through a lot. I lost my mother. He didn't say this, but I'll say this. He lost a best friend in his mother. But now he's also going through losing his wife. So he's like, I have a lot of things happening at the same time that is very traumatic for me. And I love the fact that I think it was Tawanda that asked the therapist spirit to ask both Mr. Braxton, their father, and Kevin how they're feeling. Because remember, they're on Zoom, so they're not there. They're at Tony's house, I believe, isn't it? Were they in Atlanta? Because Tony has 2 homes, in Atlanta and one in LA. I think it was in Atlanta. So she checks in on them and see how they're feeling. Mr. Braxton, he in that moment, I'm more paying attention to Miss Evelyn because look, we know what they went through and the trauma that they have gone through together, which has been imposed upon the children. You can see her facial reaction. Again, we're watching reality television. Do we believe that producers just inserted her facial? No, she's looking at the screen. So I know that this was real. And we know that her relationship with Mr. Braxton has not been the best. Rightfully so. She has her own stuff, which has led a lot of you to say this whole conversation on Tamar being the villain and Tawanda being the actual villain. A lot of people are saying, well, y'all not ready to have this conversation, that Miss Evelyn is the actual villain. Well, let me pull up my psychology bachelor's degree and say to you, we all play a part. We all are a villain in everyone's story or in our personal story. At some point, we are wrong. At some point, we are triggering. At some point, even me, perfect Taurus, is wrong. I'm sure I am the villain in people's story I don't even know. Well, that's something else. But I'm sure I play a part as the villain in my own family story, in their own minds, in their own perception. Do I believe that? No, I'm an angel. Look.
Lies! The lie!
Okay, Candy. Sidebar. I haven't had a chance yet, guys. I did, after seeing The Wiz on Saturday, Sunday, I had a lot of things going on, and then by the end of Sunday, I just was not feeling great. So I said, I need to lay down. Sometimes you just pay attention to your body, and that's exactly what I did. And then I decided to watch this heavy episode. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is the greatest the greatest thing to do, but at the same time, and shout out to Miss Esquire and a lot of you that called in last week. You reminded me of the purpose that I have with the platform that I have and us having these conversations. And shout out to all of you that called in and shared your own personal stories and comments and opinions. And we will get back to doing live callers and things like that because I do want to hear some more of what you guys have to say. It's just a crazy week. So that's part of the reason why this is pre-recorded. But I also wanted to make sure that I got this out because we don't have a Real Housewives New Jersey to recap. So this is the perfect time to focus on the show. Also, I think this is unlike what we see on New Jersey of people not really healing or moving forward. I know it didn't feel like healing in this episode. However, I do feel like we are on our way. Sometimes you gotta get through the ugliness and the nastiness to get to the healing. Okay. Rewinding back. So we check in on Mr. Braxton, and he basically says, I'm just here to listen and learn. And then Miss Evelyn's giving him the evil eye. Okay, Miss Evelyn. Then Kevin Jr. shares, what he's going through with the loss of his mom because he's an only child, and apparently he doesn't have the relationship with his father right now either. So they're all sort of like in their own corners, suffering and upset. Okay. All right, so let's go to Tony. So Tony talks more about the struggles of, first of all, seeing Traci sick, expecting to be the one to die before any of her other siblings because she's been the sickly one this entire time. I have also seen that you guys have said when we get into this conversation about villains, a lot of you are saying, well, no one's ready to have the conversation that Tony's the villain. I was like, oh, you guys have feelings, like real feelings about this family that you don't know. But I get it. Look, I'm giving you grace. You don't know them, but you're triggered by your own family trauma. And it may not look or sound or have the same exact dynamics, and you might not even realize that you're triggered. But you're triggered by something that is familiar to you by this family. So I implore people that are watching and did not realize, maybe like, oh, wait, maybe you're right. This is why therapy is great. And sometimes therapy isn't therapy in the formal way, even though I think that's fantastic. Therapy is having conversations like this, hearing other people's stories, sharing those stories in the comment section or in the live chat. People learn from each other. I learn from you guys all the time in so many different ways. And I remember Oprah talking about this as well. You know, the years of counseling and therapy that she could have gotten, she got from doing the Oprah Winfrey Show. And I feel like the more that I do this, the more that we have these types of conversations. And yes, we have funny conversations and shady conversations, but we also have very deep conversations as a community, and we learn from each other, from your personal stories. When you guys call in, this is why I love having the callers too. I learned from that too, and I think a lot of you learn from that. So Tony talked about being the older sibling, and she talked about the burden of, and this was really interesting, but this is why I majored in psychology, because I find the reason why people do the things that they do and why they do the things that they do and what triggers people has always been fascinating to me, to a point where I almost became a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist. But this is not about me. But I found it to be interesting when Tony said that she's had to sort of learn how to prioritize her own children because she had grown up feeling like she had to prioritize her sisters. She struggled with this. If you watch the Braxton Family Values, she's always struggled with this. She's talked about this. She's talking about it again because I think it's important to talk about so you understand where Tony is coming from. So she says she battles with prioritizing her family, her immediate family, versus her sisters. And I think this, and for those that watch our Love and Marriage Huntsville recast, when we talked about Nell and why Dr. Francis focused on Nell as the matriarch of this family, because she's at the root. And I think the root, which a lot of you notice and have said, and I'm not going to call Miss Evelyn the villain, but she's at the root of the trauma and the triggers in this family. I know she might not take ownership of that. And look, they're all adults. At some point, you have to be like, okay, yes, my parents did this, but at what point do I take ownership and go to therapy and figure out my own stuff and start setting up those boundaries? So Tony talks about how she struggled with prioritizing her family, her sisters, versus her new family, her sons, and whatever relationship she was in at the time. So I thought that was pretty interesting when she mentioned that. So Tony really does struggle being the oldest and balancing, okay, I have my sons that I need to worry about now. I can't worry about you. And I think for a long time, and I'm not sure what those conversations were, I can't remember Braxton Family Values or if it even came out there, what her parents instilled in her at the time. This is why I find it so funny, because I can say this about my own family, is that, and I've said this with friends in conversations when we talk about our families and our family dynamics, I love it when parents say that they expect you to be one way, however they didn't raise you to be that way. So when I look at Miss Evelyn saying that she wants them to get along and just kind of be a certain way, I'm like, did you instill that in them? Or what exactly did you instill in them? Because it seems as if they are struggling because of the way that they grew up and the way that they did not learn how to communicate. Because clearly, Miss Evelyn was going through what she was going through because of her relationship and her own family triggers, I'm sure, and that was passed on. So now they're trying to figure out this family dynamic. And I can understand why Tony struggles with trying to be there for her sisters, as she has always been, and the whole idea of how they view her, because they view her as perfect, and she says, "I'm not. I know that I'm not. I know that they think that that's what I think that I am," and I think that's how the audience views Tony as well. Like, oh, they're probably triggered by that as well because they have an older sibling very similar like Tony. I can't say that Tony makes it seem as if she's perfect. I think Tony conducts herself as her own matriarch of the family. And I said this during our last recap. I feel like she is sort of like she was a parent. Yes, they have parents and they had active parents. However, she still was a parent because she was in there financially and probably emotionally supporting her sisters and her parents. You remember if the early days of Tony, not even just the early days, up until recently, those sisters were doing background vocals for her while she was touring and doing live performances. So she was being a financial support for a lot of people. All right. So Tony talks about that. Tawanda, the way that you guys want to drag Tawanda, do I think Tawanda is perfect? No. But I love what Tawanda said, that she knows she deals with grief a little bit differently. And I appreciated her perspective because I think her perspective did help some people this week in regards to energy never dies. It's something that I learned years ago. But it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to really understand it, feel it, live it. And I feel like Tawanda really believes and feels like Traci is with her. So for her, and maybe her sisters hold that against her, is that I'm okay with the fact that Traci is no longer physically here with me because I know that she is here energetically. And I love the way that she explained it. She has seemed to but she's always sort of been that almost like Tony, because remember she was like Tony's personal assistant for a long time. She's sort of like that other person in the family that keeps everyone together. But it makes me a little concerned, Tawanda. I'll say this, because I hope you did have your opportunity. Yes, it's one thing to understand energy is real. Traci is no longer with us. But I hope you've had your opportunity to feel your feelings. And look, we're watching an hour show. Who knows what else was said during this therapy session? Because I'm sure they filmed for hours, this therapy session. For them to do an part of last week's episode and an hour this episode, I know they filmed for a few hours. Okay? But I hope for Tawanda, she's had her own therapy, but I also hope that she's had her opportunity to grieve and to feel her feelings. Because a personality like that, I can understand and I'm familiar with. It's also a shield. I always do feel like there is a shield around Tawanda for whatever reason. All right. So Tawanda talks about that. We literally in the middle of this episode, we have the Kevin Jr. police situation, which leads to Tamar saying, like, what's going on? Trina's tapping this one. And it seems as if there's stuff going on. And Tamar calls it out. She's like, you all have your secrets. And Tony's like, what secrets? Tony is just as not familiar with what's going on as Tamar is. But Tamar's just like, you guys have your own secrets. So she feels left out. So there was a tweet going around. You know, the tweets go viral, but for this week's episode, a lot of people have been reacting to a clip between Tawanda and Tamar that's been going viral. Shout out to our friends at OMFG Reality TV. You'll be able to see that clip on their website. For those that haven't watched the episode, they always have really great clips from the episodes of all the reality television that you guys may enjoy. So this clip shows this fight or argument or disagreements, probably, because I wouldn't want to call it a fight. Disagreement between Tamar and Tawanda. This happens after Kevin Jr. seemingly has some issue with the police. Tawanda gets on the phone with him. Again, very much like she's in control. She's one of, like, another leader amongst these sisters. And she's apparently knows a lot more what's going on. Tamar feels left out. She's like, what's going on? So Tamar expresses her grievances with the sisters. And her grievances is that she feels as if she wants a sisterhood, but they are not willing to do it. Trina brings up, like, well, 9 times out of 10, if you call me and you say you need me, I show up. And Tamar will like, yes, you do. Again, I didn't see that conversation with Tony and Tamar. I used to feel like they were closer, and maybe they are, but maybe something has changed in recent years. and relationships change. But it's Tawanda and Tamar that seemingly, Tamar alludes that the only time she talks to Tawanda is when they're filming. And Tawanda, very like controlled, and says, I speak in facts. If you call me, do I pick up? If you text me, do I respond? But it also seems as if Tawanda is protecting her peace. I've seen that popular meme go around this week saying the TV villain, a picture of Tamar, the actual villain, Tawanda. I was like, okay, guys, I get where you're coming from. Based off the show, maybe some people perceive it that way. But based off of everything that I know, I'm not going to say that this is the truth, again, because we're watching a reality television show. We don't know these people. I always have to remind you guys that we don't know these people. And we don't know everything. But based off of everything that we've seen with the show, Tawanda and Tamar, and everything else, Tamar, that we've covered, because as you know, for those that aren't familiar, are you just finding us here? We don't just talk about reality television. We talk about everything in pop culture. And Tamar, recently, we were just talking about Tamar going on social media, slamming her family as toxic and awful, and then making it seem as if she got married to Bang Yang Yang Man and they broke up. Only for her the next day to be like, oh, you guys just want to hear the bad stuff. You know, Bang Yang Yang Man. She didn't say it like that. But JR is a fantastic man. And I said to myself, I get why Tamar is the way that she is. It stems from how she grew up, not feeling prioritized for whatever reason. And that behavior, because she hasn't really, I know she says she's gone to therapy and she's done all the things. And I have to say, in this therapeutic environment, she seemed very level-headed, unlike moments that we've seen of her in other spaces. But if I'm to base everything that we've seen of Tamar, and again, in all fairness, we haven't seen everything of Tawanda besides the show. But again, Tawanda's not on social media having public battles with other celebrities. Based off what I've seen with Tamar, she isn't a credible or reliable reporter. I'm still giving Tamar grace because I think she's dealing with trauma from her childhood and with her sisters and the way she was raised, and also recently losing a sister. So I'm giving her grace. But I also don't think, first of all, I don't want to label either one of them villains, because like I said before, I feel like we all play a part. But I'm not going to say that Tawanda is necessarily the villain here either, because I have seen so much. I've seen a pattern of behavior from Tamar that she is the common denominator in a lot of the victimhood that she likes to claim on social media. Like most recently, and I know a lot of people said, you know, what she did on social media recently, talking about her sisters and talking about this man, was a way to get people to talk about the show. I don't believe that. I believe Tamar is an emotional being. She's a Pisces. You know, we talk astrological signs. Happy full moon in Aquarius. I hope you guys wrote down your manifestations. I did. And I hope all of them will come true. Just write them down and let them go, okay? She is a Pisces, so she is very emotional. So I always keep that in mind as well. But with her being emotional, she's also very intuitive. She's also very sensitive. And that sensitivity, I see that, especially when Trina was going through what she was going through. You can see that sensitive side of Tamar. And I was just like, and even Tamar in her confession, I was just like, very level-headed. But there are things and there are reasons why that Tamar reacts the way that she reacts. Okay? Before we continue, have you liked the video yet? Have you rated the episode? How would you rate this week's episode of the Braxtons from 1 to 10? And did you know that you can hear an audio version of our live recaps and special episodes? Special episodes like our Kempire After Dark live experience here in New York City. I am going to do a special episode hopefully this week because I really want to talk about The Wiz on Broadway. It just closed over the weekend. I was hoping that they would extend it, but I said I'm not going to wait. If they were going to extend it, they would have announced it already. So I went on Saturday, had a fantastic time, but I want to talk more about it because honestly, it was, all of you said that it was incredible. Wait till you hear what I have to say. No, I'm playing. Okay. Oh, and thank you. I've been getting more things from our registry for my new move. So thank you to those of you that have sent stuff, and apologies for those of you that maybe I missed. They didn't have your name or whatever was on it. We did do a housewarming virtual housewarming. We will do a part 2, possibly, no, not possibly, definitely this week, because I want to open those boxes and get those boxes out of here. Because I'm getting to a place of, all right, everything is sort of away, except a couple of boxes, just because I'm waiting on pieces of furniture that would store some of this stuff. But it is what it is. Grateful. But thank you to those of you that have sent something. The registry is still available. Again, you don't have to get anything. The way that you can support: liking the video, subscribing, going watching some of our other videos that maybe you missed over the last week, and liking and giving a comment, or going to the podcast and giving us a 5-star review, or follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. It's a very different experience. I go live on all those platforms at different times, so be sure to follow us there. All right, so back to this episode. So Tamar and Tawanda get into it, and Tamar's just like, oh, when was the last time you texted me? And Tawanda was like, well, I didn't get a text from you for my birthday. And she was like, well, that was in September. We're now in March. Clearly, here's the thing with family. There are some siblings that will have that sisterhood. And I know Tamar keeps saying that she wants that sisterhood. And there are some that you just won't have that relationship with. And I think the more you try to force something, the more that there will be conflict. I think you have to meet people where they are. And it seems in that moment for me, and I think some of you get this as well, because some people that were like, oh no, Tawanda's a real villain. Some people understand, no, Tawanda was setting her boundaries. Tawanda was protecting her peace. Because if we only see a glimmer of Tamar on social media and other reality TV spaces, I can't imagine that energy in real life, to be honest with you. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with Tamar. It just doesn't necessarily mingle well with all personalities. And based off Tawanda's energy, I can see her not wanting that energy around her. Some people have said that Tawanda was not comfortable with Tamar's success since starting this reality show. That can be true. But at the same time, it could also be true that Tawanda's like, yeah, you and I just don't commingle well together. And maybe some of that's rooted in Tawanda not loving that Tamar became the blowout success. I lean not to necessarily believe that. Maybe, but hear me out. Let me walk through this, because I'm going to walk through my thoughts. I don't believe part of that because she already had a sister, Tony, her older sister, be a huge success. Dare I say Tony is, no, not dare I say, I'm going to say it. She was part of the lead big ballad singers of her time. The Whitneys, the Mariahs, the Celine Dion's, the Toni Braxtons. So the fact that she doesn't have those issues with Tony says a lot to me. However, here I go twerking on a fence. For those that are new here, get the t-shirt, houseofkempire.com. You can also get this shirt, this hat, for those that are watching. The woo 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 hat. Okay, woo 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 Tamar. Sorry. But hear me out. Maybe though, in Tawanda's mind, she never really respected or thought Tamar was that interesting or deserved that. So maybe that's why she would look at Tamar and be like, yeah, you getting all the success, you don't deserve that. You're not the most talented. Maybe. I'm just giving you all aspects. However, I also feel like in the moment what I sense from Tawanda, that energy, that Tamar energy that we've seen with other people that aren't her family, Tamar is the common denominator. However, Tamar in this particular episode seemed very grounded. I mean, she had her moments. She was making those faces, and then she was getting a little crunk with Tawanda. But when she talked about prioritizing her mental space and her boundaries with her family so that she can prioritize her son and her family, I was like, well, okay, I can see that. But again, that's a confessional. Confessional is not in that moment. Confessional is when you're very controlled and you can spin the narrative the way you want to spin the narrative. Remember that. Remember, those aren't filmed in the moment. That's why they need to get back to it. I forgot what show that did it. It's probably like Big Brother, but there were some other reality shows, newer reality shows where literally, I think it was like Ultimate Girls Trip, yes, where they'll have a scene and then they immediately go into the confessional. I like those because you can't take those back. Those are in the moment. Because in the later filmed confessionals, you can kind of clean up some of the things that you said and did in that moment and why you did it. Not to say that's what Tamar was doing, but I'm going to give Tamar grace. Like I said, I'm giving everyone grace because they are sharing their grieving in front of the entire world. Speaking of grieving, so when this Tamar and Tawanda stuff happens, Miss Evelyn decides to chime in. And some of you were saying, here comes Miss Evelyn with her Tyler Perry moment. No, this was Miss Evelyn showing us why these sisters have the issues that they do. But Miss Evelyn says, I lost a child. Again, I don't know what that is like because, again, I have parents that lost a child. I don't know what that's like because I never gave birth to a child. When she described, like, I gave birth to Traci and I lost, that is undescribable unless you've experienced it. So I'm going to give Miss Evelyn some grace. But I didn't expect her to turn up the way that she did, and she went to go check in on the oxtails. And literally when she came back, her reaction, I was just like, and the way that her reaction shifts all of their energy, she is the root. And now I understand why Dr. Francis on Love and Marriage Huntsville went to the root of the problem with Nell's family, which was Nell. Because he felt as if we correct what's happening there, it will trickle down to the rest of the family. So I agree with a lot of you that say that Miss Evelyn is the problem or the villain. I'm not going to say or use those words, but she is the root of what they are going through as a family. And she might not even realize that. But there does come a point with adults that we have to go through our own journey. We have to go through our own therapy. We have to make our own decisions, which I think they all are doing and trying to do. So Miss Evelyn has her outbursts, and all of them are like, Trina, and you see this in some of the past episodes, and in the Yana Fix My Life episode too. Trina and her interaction with her mother is very mom, and Trina's still very much a little girl, because she goes and you can tell that she was like the problem fixer, and she runs and she tries takes her mom's cup before she spills it, and even if you go back to the Yana episode, the way that Miss Evelyn treated Trina, it should be studied. I'm not a psychotherapist. I only got a bachelor's in psychology. But there's something there. So therapists, because I know we have quite a few therapists that watch as well. Hey, I'd like to hear your interpretation of Trina's relationship with her mom and the interactions that you may have noticed with her mom. There's something there. I can't pinpoint or psychoanalyze what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing between their interactions, but it's very interesting. Trina always has my heart. I've interviewed Trina years ago on Kempire Radio. She's a very likable spirit. I never interviewed Traci, but I love the flashbacks of Traci. They show Traci in her last days, and I know some people can't watch that, can't stomach that, understandably. When I lost my sister, we didn't have time to even have last days. But the same year that I lost my sister, a couple of months before, I lost one of my best friends, and she also was very ill, and we saw that process. But the difference for me is that she had always been sort of ill. She would have stints going into the hospital, and then she would come out. This last stint, she wasn't coming out of the hospital. I went to go see her. I didn't expect to have the reaction that I had when I saw her. I'm not gonna cry on this thing. Look. Which is fine. Shout out to Yana, because Yana says there's more room out here than on the inside, so cry. But I'm not going to do it on here. I cry in my bedroom by myself, okay? No. So seeing the grieving process, look, there's probably a lot more that we're going to see this season in regards to the things that were said in those last days. We got a little bit of that from Miss Evelyn when she says, you guys need to stop arguing. Traci said, you guys need to stop arguing. She said, if y'all don't stop arguing, I'm going to haunt you. Okay? So we get to see Traci in her last days, but they also throw back to Traci was like a pot of coffee. She was always energetic. They're showing all these really funny moments with Traci. And honestly, I'm sure they look back on doing this reality show, although they have their regrets of doing it. They have these memories that will live on. Like you literally have photos and video of your family and these funny moments with your siblings. And they said in this episode they didn't realize how much of a bridge or a connector Traci was in the family. And I think a lot of you said that over the years based off of watching the show for as long as you were watching Braxton Family Values. But I love seeing the old footage, especially for those that are just starting to watch the Braxtons as its own show right now. I love the fact that they throw back to all of that, so people do get familiar with some of the things from the past seasons. I probably should do a rewatch. I think I might do a rewatch. I can't right now because I have a lot of shows. I'm watching Big Brother, Love is Blind, UK. Stay tuned. I might do a live recap of that just because there's just so much to unpack. But we'll talk. I have a lot to do. Okay, so I might do a Braxton Family Values rewatch. Maybe. Look, maybe. Anyways, have you liked the video yet? Why not? Are you watching from the bushes? I see you. No, I see you. No. Shout out to our King's Guards for holding us down in the live chat and in the comment section. Shout out to the replay crew. Don't forget to let us know where you're watching from, how you would rate the second episode of the Braxtons from 1 to 10. And shout out to our channel members. Become a channel member today. There are all kinds of really great perks and perks that you don't even realize that happen. Become a member today at teamkempire.com/join. All right. So again, as I'm watching the episode, I'm like, oh, we're still in grief therapy. I guess we're not going anywhere outside of grief therapy. Okay. I'm fine with that. Because I was engaged the entire time. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to talk about. I love Trina. Trina was like, okay, are we done? Because I need to go check on my oxtails. She goes check on her oxtails. And then she, before she goes, Spirit, the grief counselor, she says, I want to make sure that we get you a referral for your own therapy for Trina. Because I'm concerned about Trina. Because she seems, of all of them, to be going through it the most. But again, she was very, very close to Traci. But who knows? The others could be going through their own things and they're just masking it. Possibly. Tony's definitely probably holding a lot in. I could tell she's holding a lot in and she isn't sharing. But she does mention that, we need to come back and revisit it. Tamar's just like, come back and revisit what? Tamar's like done. She's over it. She's like, I'm not trying to do this again with you guys. Okay. Tamar did say, I forgot where she said it, but basically I think it was with Carlos, that she's like a friend of this season, but she's one of the executive producers, like a separate executive producers from her sister. And you see her business name at the end, Tamar Braxton Productions. So we shall see what the rest of the season will look like. But to be honest with you, although I do enjoy Tamar as a reality TV personality, this season isn't about personality. This season is about their love letter to their sister Traci and what everyone else is going through. And I am interested to seeing more of the others this season. And also learning more about Kevin Jr. and their support of Kevin Jr. They said that they've really tried to show up. Oh, one thing that I wanted to mention. Was it Trina that said this? Oh, no, it was Tamar, I think, that said this. Yeah, I think it was either Trina or Tamar. I think it was Tamar, because Tamar has been saying that she wants more of a sisterhood. And I think this happens to a lot of families. Again, why I think a lot of you are triggered by watching this show. When a health crisis happens or when a death happens, it brings families together. It causes a lot of issues and causes a lot of trauma. It causes a lot of arguments. But there also is this point where people put all their issues to the side and everyone's close. And we see the video footage of the final days with Traci. And they're all there. They're laughing. They're twerking. They're making jokes. They're singing. They're hanging out with Traci. They're in bed with Traci. They're making jokes with Traci. And I think Tamar loved that. and she wanted more of that. She thought that that would continue, and that has not continued because people go off into their own corners of the world and grieve or get back to their old lives and things like that. So I think there needs to be, because there's definitely a lot of love here, and I'm not one to say people need to be family and they need to always be there for each other. You should make time if you can, because there are toxic families where you should not. Those I say no, protect your peace. But if it's not toxic and you do love being around your family, maybe not all the time, then at least make an effort to do that. And maybe this show has done that for them, bringing them together and that they have this time. Can you imagine if they didn't have the Braxton family values and they didn't have this next chapter of the Braxtons? I think they are probably a lot closer because of the show. They might disagree. They might say, no, the show really tarnished our relationships. I don't know if I believe that. But it will be interesting to see how this first season of the Braxton ends and if they will continue after the season. But again, as I said at the top of this video, I implore you guys to give them grace, each and every single person. I'm giving Tamar grace. I'm trying to, okay? But I want you guys to give everyone grace because they are dealing with grief. They're dealing with losing their sister, an integral part, a person they didn't realize was such an integral part of their lives and of their sisterhood. It will be interesting, though, to see if Miss Evelyn gets to a place of being the focal point and the initial trigger of what they're going through as a sisterhood. Yes, she comes across as the voice of reason in this particular episode, but literally when she steps away and she comes back, I'm like, oh no, Miss Evelyn, what they said about you on social media and what they've been saying about you for years is true. Like you're still holding on to your issues with your husband, your ex-husband. Just your reaction to him, how many years later, you're still just giving him the evil eye. I'm like, oh, I'm not saying that you have to love the man, but if you still are harboring feelings, then I think that, without a doubt, as someone that is a child of separated parents, not the same circumstances, but the way that you speak about that person, the way that you, even if you don't speak negatively, you're giving him the evil eye. All of that is felt by the children. We were just talking about this with one of the other reality shows, and I can't remember which one. You guys will remind me in the live chat, where, it was Danielle Cabral off of the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and she was talking about changing the name of her father when talking to Nate about the trauma that they're going through. And I said, those kids know what's going on. Kids are a lot more intuitive than you give them credit. Kids are very intuitive because you haven't beat it out of them. The world hasn't beat the intuitiveness out of them yet. So they're very much aware. So there was a period of time that these sisters were very much open and vulnerable to the anger, the trauma, the negativity of this relationship. And it has probably affected their relationships. Without a doubt, it's affected their relationships with other partners and with each other. This felt like a psychotherapy recap. And I'm not a psychotherapist, but shout out to all the psychotherapists watching. Please feel free to weigh in and share your thoughts below. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed our recap of the Braxtons, and we are going to continue to recap. I can't promise you when I'll be dropping them. Luckily, we don't have any shows to recap on Sundays right now, but I did hear that Real Housewives of Salt Lake City will be returning September 18th, according to TV Guide. And then, of course, we have Real Housewives of New York coming October 1st. Potomac has wrapped. Real Housewives of Atlanta seemingly probably wrapped over the weekend at Ashley Oakley's big event, which is interesting because Phaedra just started. So makes me wonder, is Phaedra really going to be full-time? And I don't know how that's going to work, but okay. And I noticed that one of the tweets that I posted over the weekend, not that it's going viral, but definitely got a lot of traction, that I said, I'm trying to keep an open mind about Real Housewives of Atlanta. However, based on what I've seen and what I've heard, I don't know. I don't know. But again, it all depends on how this is brought together and edited. We of course will be talking about it and recapping it. For those that say, "Oh, I'm not going to watch," I'm going to give it a chance, especially because it's a lot of new energy there. Okay, I'm not necessarily looking forward to particular people. All right. What else did I want to talk to you guys about before we go? Real Housewives of Atlanta, Married to Med. I'm probably looking more forward to Married to Medicine without Phaedra than I am Atlanta, New York, Salt Lake City. Definitely not. Sidebar for those that may have missed it, because we talked about it during one of our other recaps about Salt Lake City. Apparently, the network did want to bring back Monica, Reality Von Teese, Garcia, Darnell, Delgado, Jussie Smollett. I know I forgot some names. They wanted to bring her back, but some of the ladies basically were screaming like Karens to the network, "No, don't bring her back." And that's why she did not return. So it will be interesting to see what the season will look like without Monica, because she definitely reinvigorated it after season 3. All right. I say all that to say, again, how would you guys rate this week's episode of The Braxtons from 1 to 10? I'm going to give it a 9.5. I'm going to give it a 9.5. I'm tempted to give it a 10 because I've never seen an episode so just about therapy from a reality show that's not just about therapy, like Fix My Life. And I feel like it was done well. Shout out to Spirit, the grief counselor. She did an amazing job. I hope maybe by the end of the season they bring her back and we have another conversation. Or I know they've never done this, right? A reunion, but maybe not a typical reunion. Maybe another counseling session. But we shall see. We shall see. I don't know what the season looks like in regards to the Braxtons, but so far they've got me. They've got me, and it's very heavy subject, but sometimes we gotta deal with our own traumas and triggers from the lessons of others, because I see that's happening on social media in people's response to this week's episode of The Braxtons. Again, guys, don't forget to check out our friends over at Rose Forever. There is a referral link with discounts and everything, so you can get some beautiful roses like I have here in the studio and in my home. I brought back 2 from the other house to here, because I was like, why am I keeping these here? Bringing these to my new home. For more information on our just Kempire-ness, everything will be available in the description. Again, thank you to our Kings Guards for holding us down. Thank you to our live chat, our subscribers, those of you watching in the bushes, and I will see you all in the next one. I don't know what the next one will be. Don't forget, we don't just cover reality television here. We talk about everything in pop culture. Check out some of the things that you missed. We had 2 lawsuits that we covered this weekend. Love & Mayor's Huntsville star and Campus Beauty CEO Stormy Steele is responding to Kyle's lawsuit. We talked about Kyle's lawsuit, her former COO, and we talk about Stormy's lawsuit. And then we had a settlement in Nicki Minaj's lawsuit to YouTuber Nosy Ho Live. So we covered that. So be sure to check out both. Go give it a like, go give it a comment. Let's get the engagement up here on the channel. All of that matters. We appreciate it. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, y'all.
I can't believe we're holding on to what we've already given up. It's like we're pacing around the obvious. Separate lives, different stories, 2 out of 4 of us are all fed up. Well, you and I play with fire, but don't say nothing. Oh, we're both busted. We'll get what's coming after you. No, don't say nothing. Or bon voyage to rendezvous. Trade fights for better views. We both need something new. Maybe we should just tell them. I should've think it's so good. So long to rendezvous. So long to. So long to. We've known each other longer. Yeah, I think that should matter. Yeah, we might have took it too far, but we feel the same way. It's like a perfect mistake. So don't say nothing. Oh, we're both busted. We'll get what's coming after you. No, don't say nothing. Or bon voyage to rendezvous. Trade fights for better views. We both need something new. gotta know. Maybe we should just tell them. Bon voyage to rendezvous. Trade flights for better views. We both need something new. Maybe we should just tell them. We shouldn't think I is so long. So long, so long to rendezvous. So long, so long to. So long, so long to. So long, so long to. Rendezvous. So long, so long to. So long, so long to. So long, so long to. Rendezvous.
Here we go now.